Absolutely, yeah. You know I do, Kevin. But my opinion is there are no investigative journalists at all.
No, not anymore.
There are none. And if people think that there are, can they please give me their names?
Yeah.
Because I would like to dispute that. There are no investigative journalists. I call them shiny pants journalists because they sit on their arses and their pants get shiny. They just use the phone. They don't get out and investigate stuff. Obviously, in my shoes, I'm limited because I have limited resources. I fund the television show myself. I don't have any researchers working for me, so it's difficult to get out in the field, but occasionally I do. And North East Lincolnshire is a place that I've been looking at.
Considering how long the series has been running, and it's every week, you know, week in, week out, apart from your tour as well, and then, I mean, you know, that's a tremendous workload.
Yeah, it does get
by any standards.
But it's important to try and keep the show every week to keep the momentum going.
Now, some years later, I was reading a book by Dolores Cannon. Some of you may know her. She's in her 80s now, but she constantly travels around the world. She's authored over 20 books. She's regressed thousands of people like myself. I had a regression with her in London some years ago. But in one of her books, she said that she found it had happened too many times to be coincidence of someone that may be lying on a bed or a couch inside the house and a funnel would come through the window, or they would be outside in the car or wherever and a funnel would come down from the sky, and out of that funnel would come numbers and letters and symbols that would go into their minds. So there is something going on here. Now, Fran found this out some years later, that the ancient Egyptian right eye of Horus mystery school teachings involved a mixture of sacred geometry and meditation. And once he had reached a certain level, the initiate might experience the vision of a golden tube from which came numbers and symbols.
Oh, it was a great day. I enjoyed to be here at Exopolitics. It was very interesting. I met very interesting people, and it's the first time I'm coming in Liverpool at the Exopolitics conference, and I'm very glad to be able to share with my friends many information on UFO, crop cycle, and exocivilizations.
So this new consciousness, would you describe it as that? Is it more relevant to the world now than it's ever been?
Yes, I'm convinced.
Has it always been there?
I'm convinced that all this work will be powerful in the end, and we will help people and aware people to get more information, and we can improve step by step the consciousness. Yes.
1959, he's on the mission is to go into that base, wipe everybody out and recover special crystal artifacts, ancient crystal artifacts which realign the interdimensional portals on the surface of the Earth with outer dimensional reality, right? The point is the Earth's surface moves around, changes, things go around, do what they're going to do. They recovered 2 crystal devices placed in the right piece of equipment. You needed 6 of them. That device then realigned the misalignments of dimensional portals on the Earth.
It's important to get away from humans, your neighbors, because your neighbors, after a month and they're starving, they'll kill you for what you have. Even though they're the closest neighbor, you've had dinner parties together. And think about it, you know, if it's between you, your family, and your neighbors, who are you going to choose? So I know that's really, really ugly to think about, and you know, it's awful, but it's very true. I mean, if there's no electricity and everything is gone, there's not even a way for the government to tell you what's going on. It's going to be awful. Awful. No, well, I'm just being prepared. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I just want to be prepared. You've heard this term prepper, you know, and they have some shows in the USA over it. I'm not a militant prepper, but I'm just somebody who chooses to be prepared in case something happens, you know. And it's a great weekend cabin too.
These witnessed by yourself as well as other people.
There's witnessed by certain individuals who I don't want to say because there's not too many of us around.
Well, we want to know, don't we?
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
interested.
You can't bring us to the door and just.
Well, the point about things is that the scuttler on these kind of devices, the crucial things about Maxwell's equations is Maxwell's equations, which is the foundation, effectively, of how we use electricity. And
these aren't the equations you find in modern physics textbooks, though, either the original equations.
You've got to get back to original equations, but the original equations weren't actually changed. They just left out a lot of
dimensions, which the new modern ones just were reduced down to 3 dimensions to make them easy to understand, allegedly. But there's probably some other reason behind it, possibly.
That's crucial to how you tune a transmitter. So how you tune a transmitter is you're actually getting 2 parts of a wave. Okay, in the middle, the wave is what we call real. Okay, graphically represented, right? But what happens with electricity? There's a phase relationship where the wave can go out of what we call phase. So that we call that the negative phase, and we call that positive phase relative to the middle, which is what we call real. So what's happened is, with Maxwell's equations, it's been very, very crudely sort of truncated, so that we deal with a very limited quantity of this. Now, the point about these 2 waves is, if you completely reverse them underneath, you get the negative real world. So you can construct a completely negative reality using the correct phase relationship of these waves. Now, the point about this is only dealing with an electric signal. You can deal with magnetics, and you can also deal with time phase.
And we all know about the Elohim, the Anunnaki that came down and tweaked with genetics. This whole idea, when you look into the recent genetic findings, this whole idea that 97% of our DNA is supposedly junk DNA. Well, some of that's to do with the fact that our lifespans have been shortened down, so we're functioning on a certain amount of that. And there's this whole other side that we don't know about, and we can't actually discover because we don't know how to codify that. Even our best scientists can't codify and find out what these what they call non-coding parts of the DNA helix actually do.
When you read about like German the physicists, it's always claimed that the reason they don't entertain Einstein theory is simply because he was a Jew. And that's just there's obviously other reasons behind it.
Einstein's another distraction. We have so many distractions. Einstein's theory of relativity is not Einstein's theory of relativity. It's Einstein's special theory of relativity. So, I mean, I'm not an expert in space-time mechanics and those kind of things, but I'm just simply saying that people should look very carefully at the original construction of the basic mathematics, the basic equations, and what we base our public knowledge of physics. For instance, when I dealt with John Lear's father, his company was the chief contractor to the United States on anti-gravity technology. Now again, the term anti-gravity is a distraction because it's not the right term. So we're constantly being given the wrong terminology, the wrong measuring instrument, the metric system.
I don't believe in the malevolence of alien entities. Just based on my experience, I mean, obviously I could be wrong, but I don't think that they're malevolent in any way, shape, or form. Because I think if they were, then we wouldn't be here. So, the black projects are legitimately classified for national security, and I can attest to that. The 2 projects that I worked on, they were extremely necessary for Western civilization to survive. I mean, from a military standpoint, we need to keep the upper hand on the crazies out there. And although the American government isn't exactly, what I would consider to be the sanest thing in the world, or your government for that matter, but at least we have some sort of Western value that keeps all the crazies at bay. And our military technology, and in concert with our Western allies, that will continue.
Now the point is...
Sorry, go on. Can so are you following this? Or?
To a degree, yeah. I'm not necessarily, I don't know some about the details. I've not seen some of the testimony. It's kind of interesting stuff.
Personally, just from an American standpoint, I feel that we have a very, very unique position in the world. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Whether they like America or not, we do definitely wield a lot of power. So I think that the framers of our Constitution had really a lot of foresight as to the future of the world. Because I think without our particular type of government and our particular type of mindset, I think the world would be a completely different world today. So the short answer to your question is I think yes, we did have there was a mastermind there, and luckily they got it right. It's not perfect by any means, please don't get me wrong, but it's important.
Well, regarding the scuttlers that you were talking about, I had I wouldn't even call it an experience. When I used to work for GlaxoSmithKline, I used to do shifts. I was doing shift work, and I was shattered, I was tired, and out the corner in my peripheral vision, I saw what I can only describe at that time as being like one of the spaceships from Babylon 5 in peripheral vision. Yeah. And that is, to me, my knowledge, a scuttle. But I've always been of the mind that that manifested in my head because I was under stress, because I was tired, and
you could have been
because
drained.
of the work.
Something could have been draining you.
So I'm just going to wonder what other evidence is there for a more physical reality?
It's perceptive evidence. The problem with all our measurement systems is our measurement systems are measuring things in one particular part of the electrical domain. These are the flying saucers. Just before they went in onto the base, 2 of these damn things took off from the Syrian desert. I showed John some flying saucer pictures from the latest final known designs of German flying saucer technology in 1945. These devices are the size of football stadia, and they have got a very similar design to German flying saucer anti-gravity technology in 1945. Okay, I've used the wrong term. Anti-gravity is the wrong term. Okay, it's not anti-gravity, it's a spatial distortion. He then subsequently describes and he demonstrates on his body implants which are on his back, which magnets stick to. If you get the kind of magnets which are in hard drives, they're made of they're silver, and they're very, 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 very powerful. And by sticking one of these things, actually the magnet stuck to his flesh because of the implants. What happened was the alien later on in this episode fired at him, and he had 4 things on his lower thing which was designed to stop him gaining access to the base. Now the point about this is that he's taken by 2 beautiful women into the secret underground alien base. He turns his head, the 2 beautiful women, bingo, transform to greys. You've got to understand that these things don't actually shapeshift. Shape-shifting uses an awful lot of energy. It's difficult, probably painful. What they do is they get you to do it for them. So you in your mind see what is either a human being or an alien. And that's why you've got to look for the join, the change. There'll be a discontinuity. That's the only time you'll see it.
Yeah, you said that you believe there's major collaboration, and has been over many years, with particularly the US or the NSA and some race of extraterrestrials. Now, if you follow the UFO phenomenon over decades, there are many incidences where, for example, the Belgian UFO flap, you've got Stevensville, Texas, you've got Phoenix Lights, you've got the animal mutilation phenomenon, where it appears that our military or our powers that be aren't in control of what's going on, and yet they seem to be monitoring it. The military do turn up when there are incidences, and to me they're clearly not in control of those things, and they're keeping an eye on them. So is there an element that they're not collaborating on?
Oh yeah. There's two factions. Well, there's one faction in the military, in the government, and then there's everything else. And so that one faction, which is the faction that knows about and interfaces with and controls the gray technology and research and development and anything having to do with aliens, they don't talk to your Joe Blow military that's chasing these lights or is releasing a media release about the lights. They don't talk to one another. The people that know about these things, when something does happen that is UFO related, they don't send a message to everybody else in the military saying, don't worry about that, we know about it. You know, they just don't do that. So that's how you get this dichotomy of, well, if you guys have been in contact with aliens, then why don't you know what's going on there? Well, some people do, but they don't tell you.
You mentioned that there was some genetic engineering involved or something, or manipulation of some kind. I just wondered if you could add that bit to your account from earlier on today.
Well, I don't know much about it. That's why I didn't elaborate on it. But I, as it was told to me, I was conceived normally, so I'm 100% human, just like everybody else, most everybody else, and in the womb, I was genetically managed, and I don't have any clue as to what that actually means, what it entailed. But they just changed my DNA a little bit so that it heightened that particular ability, which is the intuitive communications.
The other interesting point that links in with the Star Child skull with Lloyd Pye, because that's been a breakthrough that I think happened in March of this year. But this FOXP2 gene was discovered by the Max Planck Institute. I think it was 2007. And one of the scientists involved in that, called Dr. Sam Chan, I think he was, basically said, they link all this FOXP2 gene as part of, it's called a language gene, but it's very much linked to the fact that it seems that this was sort of a sideways insertion, as they call it, into our genetics, which again, who did that? These 500,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago, whatever it was, who did that? How did this certain gene that made us different from the primates that I was talking about earlier, how did that happen? That suddenly there's this huge leap that we get, we see these both the chimpanzees that we're meant to have come from don't have this linguistic ability, and yet all of a sudden man develops this ability, and our evolution shoots off at rocket speed. And this is something to do with this gene that's been found recently, which strangely enough is called the language gene. It doesn't so much form language as it's the catalyst for developing things like vocal cords and areas in the brain that do it. So in certain people, when this FOXP2 gene is damaged, then you find that they have kids that are grown up have problems with linguistic ability and things. There's some link between that and autism, other stuff they're doing. It's all very early research, but that's an interesting area in itself.